America's best days are yet to come. That's because conservatives like you know and live the values our great country was built on. The Heritage Foundation exists to make sure your voice is heard in the D.C. swamp each day, shining the light on a bright future. The Heritage Foundation stands for your values and won't give up the fight because they know you never will. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Levin here. Our number 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. I'm surmising that at some point the president will have to trigger the Insurrection Act, which has been used some 24 times in our history by some of the greatest presidents ever. I went through that list with you once. I want to go through it again in a little bit more detail during the course of the program because of the language that's being used by the Democrats, the media, and the other leftists. Those of you who bought on power, and I'm not promoting anymore, I'm just saying, you really invested wisely. The value of this book for what you pay is second to none. And I encourage you to go to Chapter 4, the chapter on language, and you'll understand completely why the Democrats do what they do, and they do it all the time now. This is taken directly from Lenin's speech that he gave in 1902. The way you whip up mobs, the way you deceive the public, the way you seize power, the way you retain power and expand it rather. And this is what the Democrats are doing. They're trying to somehow pigeonhole this sort of Leninist propaganda operation, agitprop, into the American system. And it has its successes. There's no question about it. But it's definitely in place. The whole purpose is to mislead. The whole purpose is to agitate for action against your opponents. I mean physical action. To fearmonger and to misinform. And in the case of a republic like ours, it is really a dagger at the heart of the civil society. And I want to get into that in a little bit. But before I do, and it's important, because it's happening and it's going to get worse, I'm going to read something to you from the editorial pages of the Wall Street Journal. And I don't always agree with those editorial pages, but they often have opinion pieces as well as editorial board pieces that are superb. Again, I don't always agree, but so what? This one, I think, is very powerful. Very powerful. It was out the other day. The peace deal proves Netanyahu's critics were wrong. They kept insisting the prime minister was prolonging the war for political reasons. We heard this here from the Democrats and the left. We even heard it from some Republicans. It was the kind of cynicism, writes Elliot Kaufman, that poses as sophistication. And he's an editorial writer for the editorial board. The belief that Benjamin Netanyahu was continuing the Gaza war for his own political purposes, that the Israeli prime minister would never end it, that he couldn't end it, The line was promulgated first by other Israelis. For most of these Netanyahu critics and rivals, the argument didn't discredit Israel's cause, whose justice was obvious to them. They merely thought the benefits to Israel of fighting were no longer worth the cost. To foreign observers, this distinction was lost. It became the conventional wisdom of the United States liberal establishment that Israelis and Palestinians were dying for no reason other than to keep Bibi in power. Netanyahu has accepted a deal to end the war, and on the terms he has always said he would: the release of all hostages and the dismantling of Hamas's military and governing capabilities. The Trump deal promises this, and unlike previous proposals, leaves Israeli troops in a position to enforce it, should the International Stabilization Force fail to do so, and I'm going to get into that. Where the hell is it? In that case, President Trump says that Israel will have his full backing to act, and given his record, Israelis have reason to believe him. That wasn't the case with President Biden. Now, the story suggesting that Mr. Netanyahu had to be strong-armed into these favorable terms are themselves to Israel's advantage, as the Prime Minister has long maintained any day after plan for Gaza with his name on it would face strenuous opposition throughout the Arab world. Better for Mr. Netanyahu to maintain his distance and smile on quotes like the one from think tank eminence Aaron David Miller to the New York Times, quote, "The ceasefire and hostage release, if it happens, only came to fruition because of Trump's willingness to pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu." So to hear Mr. Miller tell it, Netanyahu really didn't want to receive all the hostages up front while keeping troops in half of Gaza, terms that earlier would have been dismissed as an Israeli fantasy. But Mr. Trump simply left Netanyahu no choice. What he's saying is this is what Netanyahu had always wanted. The president himself tried this one on Axios reporter and CNN analyst Barak Ravid. Quote, "I said, Bibi, this is your chance for victory. He was fine with it." Mr. Trump told Mr. Ravid, "He's got to be fine with it. He has no choice. With me, you got to be fine with it." It is true that Mr. Trump didn't ask but told Israel to cease fire for the last stretch of negotiations. This was after Prime Minister Netanyahu had accepted the deal and Hamas had given a yes. But it was a yes but reply. It is also true that Mr. Ravid is an alumnus of Israel's left-wing Haaretz newspaper, its radical, self-hating newspaper. In the lead-up to the June strikes on Iran, Mr. Ravid's antagonism toward Netanyahu made him the White House's favorite recipient for leaks about a break between the president and the prime minister, and as part of the deception campaign, it worked fabulously. In other words, the guy's not only a leftist who hates Netanyahu and is a self-hating Israeli, but he's a clown. He's a clown. They leaked stuff to him that worked in their favor when they were getting ready to attack Iran. Meanwhile, between those strikes on Iran, the deal, the Abraham Accords, Mr. Netanyahu has helped deliver Mr. Trump's greatest success abroad in each of his terms. Now, the sour grapes argument today is that Israel could have had this deal at any time, but it isn't true. Hamas had always demanded Israeli withdraw from all of Gaza in exchange for the hostages. That way, Israel would forfeit much of its leverage before any Hamas disarmament took place. None would be likely to follow, and Hamas might well have secured the post-war future it desired. Intent is difficult to determine. It could be that after the failure of October 7, Netanyahu believed he needed a total Israeli victory to redeem his personal legacy for the history books, or at least for the next election. He doubtless also believed that his government's survival was in the national interest and made compromises to keep it afloat. Such intermingling of motives is normal in politics. But what if Mr. Netanyahu was just right? Give him the benefit of hindsight, given that benefit, and look at the previous junctures at which he was condemned for not bringing the war to a conclusion. In other words, if he had done what his critics had said, brought this war to a premature conclusion, none of this would have been happening. Political survival had to be the explanation, his critics charged. But isn't it good for Israel that the prime minister didn't buckle under the pressure before Israel had taken Rafah, killed Hamas leader Sinwar there, cut off Hamas's arms smuggling route from Egypt, that he didn't settle for peace and quiet while Hezbollah's Nasrallah and missile arsenal still loomed over Israel like a sword of Damocles, while the Iranian nuclear program was still intact and advancing toward a bomb. He's saying none of this would have been stopped had he typically agreed, as most prime ministers would have, and as Biden was pressuring and Europe was pressuring, for a premature ceasefire. By holding three-quarters of Gaza and closing in on Hamas's capital beginning in August, Israel pressured the terrorists into agreeing to terms they had long resisted for a partial hostage deal. But when Netanyahu then rejected that, insisting on a deal to return all the hostages at once and disarm Hamas, that was dismissed, even in August, as a pipe dream, including by the Israeli defense establishment. Finally, Netanyahu's critics seem to have had their proof that the prime minister was deliberately prolonging the war, and his September 9th strike on the Hamas negotiators in Qatar only confirmed it to them. But a month later, the pipe dream had been christened the Trump deal, and Hamas has agreed to it. The strike in Doha is believed to have sent the Qataris spinning. After Mr. Trump's placations, they leaned on Hamas to take the deal. See his point? Everybody's saying, and there was a whole leak in the New York Times, and of course they regurgitate from the left, from the anti-Israel perspective, the anti-Bibi perspective. They go on and on about how that really infuriated our president. And so he leaned on Israel to make a deal. And the point here is, Bibi was already for these things. It was Qatar that was the problem. It was Hamas that was the problem. Disarm. Release all the hostages in one move. He says, you don't have to believe that Netanyahu planned it all out. I don't. And the costs of the long war were all too real. But by continuing the fight, the prime minister kept Israel's options open to achieve its war aims and smash the Iranian proxy assets and nuclear program. When the opportunities came around, ultimately he secured better terms for the hostages' release and the war's end. Mr. Kaufman is a member of the Journal's editorial board. I thought this was a brilliant editorial. I think he got it right in a big way. But now we have Hamas. So the Arabs and the Muslims are supposed to be disarming Hamas. Hamas is not disarming right now. Hamas says it will not disarm, it will not disband, it will not leave. There are mass executions going on by Hamas, going after these clan families and militia groups that have challenged them over time, slaughtering people who they claim were Israeli, spies. In other words, just slaughtering anybody who disagrees with them, even people who are troubled by the way the feeding is taking place under Hamas's thumb. It looks like Hamas has moved into these areas that Israel has pulled back on. And so now there's a vacuum. And Hamas is filling it. And it's all over the media in the Middle East. And so the question is, what happens now? Where are the Muslim countries and the Arab countries who thought this phase two would be great and that they would take some control over this? I mean, this can't go on for many days, because if it goes on for many days, what is it? Israel has to go back in there, lose its soldiers, fight the same fight when they had this enemy surrounded in the city of Gaza? What exactly is going to happen now? Now, I'm the only one who's been asking about phase two, here behind the microphone, on Fox, on Blaze. You got to have the courage of your principles, the courage of your convictions to speak about these things. All I ever see around here, I'm being honest with you, Mr. Producer, conservative talk radio was supposed to be sort of the point of the spear for principled conservatives who would think for themselves and speak out and have the courage to do so. Same with other platforms and so forth. But I'm not seeing it, and I'm not hearing it. I'm not seeing it, and I'm not hearing it. The president was asked about this today. I thought I saw something in here that you put on the list here about Hamas. Here it is. And he was asked about it, and he says, I'm not going to put up with this. Cut 3, go.
President, on Gaza, how long will it take Hamas to disarm, and can you guarantee that is going to happen?
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
How will you do that?
I don't have to explain that to you. But if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. They know I'm not playing games. Okay? Now, we did something monumental. We got the hostages back. That was the first thing we had to do. Above all else, get the hostages back. Now, they misrepresented because we were told they had 26, 24 of dead hostages, if we can use those terms. And it seems as though they don't have that because we're talking about a much lesser number. But that's a very tough subject. I want them back. That's what they said. I want them back. Also, they said they were going to disarm. And initially speaking, they needed, they did take out a couple of gangs that were very bad, very, very bad gangs, and they did take them out, and they killed a number of gang members. And that didn't bother me much, to be honest with you. That's okay. We had a couple of very bad gangs. It's no different than other countries. Like Venezuela sent their gangs into us, and we took care of those gangs. We have Washington, D.C., is one of the safest cities in the country. It was one of the worst cities in the country if you go back just a little while ago, right? Now it's safe. You can walk to work. Isn't it nice? But we have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes, you say
because
quickly.
Everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm.
We will be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. For decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. One of the things we do as a family, but it's really my wife Julie who's led the way on this, is when a family member or a friend, or say a parent or a spouse of a friend, passes away, we don't even tell people this. Mr. Producer, we don't even tell people this. We have trees planted in Israel in their name, in their memory, in the Holy Land, the birthplace of Judaism and Christianity. She does it quietly, usually unannounced. Sometimes we'll let the folks know if it's a particular kind of thing in their faith where they really believe in it, as we do. That's how we do this. I'll be right back. We're coming upon the 250th birthday of the United States, and it has me thinking, what will America look like 250 years from now? My friends at the Heritage Foundation want to know what you think. What policies should America prioritize? What principles should carry us into the decades ahead? As America enters a new golden age, Heritage recognizes that this is the time to take stock and to be intentional about how we shape the future of America. And they can't do it without your input. So please go to heritage.org/LEVIN and let them know what you think is important. Without patriots like you stepping up and speaking up for what you believe in, America as we know it can't survive for another 250 years. Please go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN. Take the survey on America's future future. This survey takes less than 10 minutes to complete, but it is critical for making sure that the America we pass on to future generations is an America we're proud of. Go to heritage.org/Levin today. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
The Mark Levin Show, the pool feed for the conservative media. Dive in now. 877-381-3811.
We have a zillion media platforms. Some of them have massive corporate ownership. Some of them have smaller corporate ownership. Some of them claim to be independent. But very few of them actually provide you with information, I notice. They just don't. Some of them are just absolutely crazy bastards who would be comfortable in the 1930s in the Third Reich. Some of them are crazy bastards who would be absolutely comfortable in Mao's China when you listen to them. Others just are pom-pom boys and girls. And then there are others who are now so enamored with the media they get on the left, they want to be on The View and so forth, that they are preposterously stupid. How about just some basic information from people who you trust and you know, who are principled and ethical and so forth and so on? Would that be nice? Well, that's what you get here. And so I want to lay the foundation for what I'm about to do when it comes to the use of the military to keep our nation safe. It's not something that is to be done quickly or frequently or with a little bit of thought. But it is something from time to time that needs to be done. In fact, it's been done 24 times in our history. The Insurrection Act, passed in 1807, the first time it was used in 1808 by Thomas Jefferson. You may remember him. He wrote the first draft of the Declaration of Independence. He provided his input in the Constitution while he was in France to his friend Madison, the father of the Constitution. I mean, he used it. He wasn't the only one. Lincoln used it. He wasn't the only one. Ulysses S. Grant used it. He wasn't the only one. Eisenhower used it. Kennedy used it. Johnson used it. George H.W. Bush used it. Were they all authoritarians? This guy, Chris Murphy's on constantly on television. Mr. Producer, you can't each day look at the clips of what the Democrats are saying without bumping into Chris Murphy. You people in Connecticut, you're not getting your dollar's worth. This guy's a lunatic, a self-promoting lunatic, who, by the way, cheated on his wife and left her. Now, that may not matter to people. It matters to me, okay? He expects you to believe what he has to say, okay? Oh, by the way, if I'm wrong about that, Senator's free to call in and correct the record. We always try to provide an opportunity, when I make statements for the people I talk about to call in and correct us. So, Senator Murphy, you're free to call in and correct us. We certainly wouldn't want to libel you here. Your absence will tell us a lot, however. Cut 12, go.
Listen, we are not on the verge of an authoritarian takeover. We're in the middle of it. Now, it's not
just listen to this guy. We're in the middle of an authoritarian takeover. We have courts ruling one way or the other. We still have habeas corpus. We're not rounding up American citizens under any emergency decree. What is this authoritarian takeover? How is it manifesting itself? By enforcing the immigration laws and trying to round up illegal aliens and remove them? Rounding up illegal aliens and removing them is what the law requires, particularly when the previous president brought in 20 million illegal aliens, and now this president is required to sort through to figure out who's what, where the unaccompanied children are, what happened to the women who were sold into pornography and sex slavery. And see, the Democrats call this authoritarianism. That's what they do. Go ahead, Mr. Producer.
We haven't lost our democracy, but, we sometimes like to think of the first term Donald Trump, the bumbling White House that didn't seem to have any theory of the case from day to day. This is a very different White House, right? Stephen Miller and his gang, they have a plan.
Okay, so you've got to create boogeymen. You got to create enemies. You got to personalize it. You've got to personalize it. We know that from Saul Alinsky, right? Rules for Radicals, who was a Marxist. So you got to personalize it. So it's Miller. Just like when it comes to the court, it's Thomas and Alito. You've got to create these personal boogeymen, these devil people. So this guy is well skilled in the art of Leninist, Marxist propaganda. Go ahead.
And that they are executing to transition our country from democracy to something fundamentally different, maybe even autocracy.
Mm-hmm. To a dictatorship. Pretty sick, don't you think? It's very sick. And so they use the weapons of the totalitarians. They use the language of the totalitarianism. Who is it that wants to centralize government, make it authoritarian? Who is it that opposes capitalism, which is the freest economic system of any? Who is it that wants to constrict your free speech, your right to bear arms? Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Who is it? Who is it that wants to pack the Supreme Court with like-minded ideologues? Who is it that wants to change the citizenry by bringing in illegal aliens, foreigners, and wants them to vote, and certainly wants our Congress determined by how many illegal aliens are here, which means more Democrats in the House, right? Who is it that's doing these things? Let's hear another. Let's go to Hillary Clinton. Cut 13, go.
We cannot be silent in the face of corruption and injustice anywhere, including here at home. So as we lift up our allies who are fighting for democracy and freedom, let's also lift up those here who are trying to do the same against the militarization of our cities.
There's one. The militarization of our cities. They're all trying to find the perfect propaganda formula, you see. Go ahead.
Of rights against corruption out in the open, against the kind of actions being taken that are right out of the authoritarian playbook.
There you go. So there's Hillary. Now we have Kamala Harris, cut 14. Let's hold off on this. Let me jump into the center of this now. Let's jump into the center of this. This is from my book on power. Again, I want to thank those of you who've acquired it and have read it. It's a very easy read with very, very deep subject matter relevant to what's going on in our country. Very important. So I go to On Power, Chapter 4 on language. Favorite negative language technique is repetition. With repetition, the more likely you are to accept and believe the supposed truth of what is being repeated, even if it's untruthful. The more you see or hear something, the more likely you are to remember it. Numerous psychologists call it mere exposure effect. According to Charlotte Nickerson, the mere exposure effect is a cognitive bias where individuals show a preference for things they're more familiar with. Repeated exposure to a stimulus increases liking and familiarity, even without conscious recognition. Essentially, the more we encounter something, the more we tend to prefer it based on familiarity alone. And I point out, of course, there are exceptions to the rule, but the rule itself holds. and it can be used as a particularly sinister and infectious propaganda device in the hands of demagogues and tyrants. I refer to this as negative repetition. Repetition, as such, destroys the conscious mind, the ability to reason, and moral clarity. But it's the autocrat who claims that only through reason and its scientific application can a truly just, equal, and prosperous society be born, and the fullness of the individual realized through the collective of the state. Of course, employing negative language to secure and exercise negative power destroys man's nature, no matter how many philosophers, past and present, insist otherwise. Is this not the dictator's way? Is this not the purpose to control, force, compel conformity, obedience, and groupthink? Is it not what you've been hearing, America? People are thought to be too ignorant, you see, obtuse, emotional, self-absorbed, to reason for themselves. But that is precisely what these people squeeze out of people. That is the ability to reason, think, and act independent of the state. And repetition often involves sloganeering as propaganda. That is, the use of simple, easy-to-recall labels, catchphrases, mental images, mottos, jingles, sayings, and so forth. They can be more immediate, effective, and long-lasting in their impact and mental footprint. For example, tax cuts for the rich, warmongers, and neocons. Repetition can also take the form of symbols, salutes, emblems, signs, songs, and the like. You get the point. The point is to control, manipulate. To manipulate. There are infinite ways to analyze language, which means there needs to be a point at which you cut it off. But for me, the language of the modern revolutionaries, the power-hungry, the malcontents, others who wish for the existing societies in the West to crumble in the pursuit of some imagined utopia or paradise, they are dangerous people, and you're hearing them. I'm playing their cuts for you. I'm playing their cuts for you. And it's no accident that ideologies of tyranny present themselves as otherworldly, inevitable, and futuristic. And it goes on in exquisite detail, if you will, the book on power. The President of the United States says, wait a minute, I am allowed to use the Insurrection Act. Cut 11. Go.
Courts have been standing in your way here. It's held up.
No, the lower courts have.
The Insurrection Act?
The lower, well, I could use it if I wanted to. I could use it. Look, that's a very simple answer. I'm allowed to use the Insurrection Act. In fact, that was on Stephanopoulos today, his Sloppodopoulos show. They asked sloppy Chris Christie about the Insurrection Act. He said, well, if you're talking about the Insurrection Act, he's got the absolute right to use that. And he said a couple of things that were good. He said 50% of the presidents that served in office have used the Insurrection Act. And the Insurrection Act, according to all of them, said it can't even be challenged. I don't have to go there yet because I'm winning on appeal. You know, you're right. We're losing with radical left judges generally, radical left judges, and we're winning on appeal. So we'll see what happens.
Of course, he's right. And when we come back, I want to go through some of those cases in which the Insurrection Act was used by half of our presidents. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. This issue of language is crucially important, which is why I spent an entire chapter on it and on power. In order to maintain negative power, to expand it, you use negative language. Negative language in pursuit of negative power. It is a weapon with which to pummel free speech, effectively. Effectively, that's what it's for. These tactics are unleashed on behalf of radical ideas, but mostly power-hungry entities. Could be foreign countries, could be obviously political parties. And it's used by communists, fascists, terrorist organizations like Hamas. These are power-hungry entities and people who use negative language not only to forcibly advance their agenda, but to conceal their faults and defects from the people so they can maintain control. That's the goal. Control. Two simple questions prove the lie, for example, of the so-called Marxist workers' paradise. Who has a better life in nearly all aspects? The assembly line worker in America, in the West, or the assembly line worker in any Marxist or other form of autocratic regime? Of course, America. No question about it. That's right. In America, in the West, indeed, we're the largest middle classes, with the largest number of mostly free, mostly satisfied, patriotic people. In America, in the West, or any Marxist or other form of autocratic regime? The answer is obvious there, too. Obvious. Negative language is among the left's greatest weapons for acquiring and maintaining power. If they're to survive, they must institute constant, radical changes in society. And that requires constant manipulation and control of the populace. That's it. By the time you're done with these programs, it is always my hope that you will be the best informed citizens of any citizenry. And we're going to get into this again much more deeply. The Insurrection Act, they act like Donald Trump would be the only one who uses it, and if he uses, he's an authoritarian. Both of those are flat-out lies, and I will prove it when we return. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Help if I turn the mic on here, right? All right, America. Mark Levin here. Welcome. We are back. Let's see here. Give me a second. I'm trying to stop something. It keeps happening. Hold on. Here we go. Here's what we're doing. And I'm suggesting this because it's actually, from our perspective, a beautiful way to honor people. Beautiful way. My wife, Julie, said that we are in fact going to be planning, we've started the process already, 2 orchards of trees in the Holy Land in Charlie's honor. Why? Because he loved Israel. And despite all the lies and the propaganda, he loved Israel. And we will plant 2 orchards of trees in Israel in his honor. We've done this for other friends and family. So his presence is there physically as well as spiritually. That's how we view this. The roots of the trees will firmly entrench and be reflective of the shared values born and thriving in the Holy Land. One of the reasons that the families of these hostages who were slaughtered want the bodies back is because so many Jews believe in the unity of the body with the earth for a proper and timely burial. And the terrorists know this, which is why they deny it. And so what we're doing here is something that we've done for family members who have passed, mostly family members and very dear friends who we know. It was my wife's idea. She always has the best ideas, Rich. And so we are in the midst, I was told, this has actually begun. So that's a wonderful thing. Again, I don't normally announce it, but I just wanted to explain that's something you might want to think about, folks. Christian or Jew, we view that, she and I, our family, is really a connection with God, a connection for Christians, the birth of your faith, for Jews, the birth of your faith, and being close to where God effectively, spiritually, and otherwise pointed his finger. That the world begins right there. I think he would have liked that. We haven't told his family. We're not writing letters. We're not doing that. I'm telling you, my radio family, because I think this is a wonderful way. If some of you are suffering, some of you have lost loved ones, even if you lost them 10 years ago or so forth. It's a wonderful way, I think, not just to recognize them and their memory and honor them, but just spiritually, soulfully, to feel the connection. I'm not lecturing. I'm not proselytizing. Just a thought. Every time the Insurrection Act has been invoked, dozens of times. First formal use of the military actually occurred before the Insurrection Act. It was 1794, as Newsweek points out. Federal troops suppressed protests in Pennsylvania over attacks on liquor. You may remember that. You may remember the Whiskey Rebellion. In 1808, Congress formalized the power of a president to be able to use the military. In 1807, with the Insurrection Act. In 1808, Jefferson invoked the act to address violations of the Embargo Act around Lake Champlain. President Andrew Jackson invoked it twice in 1831 during Nat Turner's Rebellion, a protest over slavery in Virginia, as well as a dispute along what was at the time the U.S.-Mexico border. He also invoked the act in 1834 during a labor dispute in Maryland. Abraham Lincoln invoked the Insurrection Act in 1861 as several southern states seceded from the U.S. at the beginning of the Civil War. After the Civil War ended, Ulysses S. Grant would invoke the Insurrection Act 8 separate times during the Reconstruction era. Many of those invocations dealt with white supremacist groups like the Klan, attacking black Americans, newly freed slaves, or attempting political violence following the end of slavery in the South and the Civil War. President Rutherford B. Hayes invoked it twice, 1877 and 1878, once to deal with striking railroad workers and the other of the Lincoln County War in New Mexico. President Chester A. Arthur used the act to suppress violence in the West. Grover Cleveland invoked it in 1885 and 1886 to address riots against Chinese immigrants, and again in 1894 during the Pullman strike, the railroad strike. Woodrow Wilson invoked the Insurrection Act in 1914 to address a labor uprising in Colorado, while President Warren Harding invoked it in 1921 to quell a labor uprising in West Virginia. Presidents invoked the act several times from the 1940s through the 1960s in connection with civil rights enforcement and integration. Franklin Roosevelt quelled race riots in Detroit using the act. Eisenhower in 1957 federalized the Arkansas National Guard, ordered it to stand down after the state sought to use it to fight integration of public schools following the Brown versus Board of Education ruling. He would then use the National Guard to protect those students and their entry. John Kennedy invoked it 3 times for the purpose of integrating schools in Alabama and Mississippi. 1965, Lyndon Johnson federalized the Alabama National Guard to protect civil rights protesters traveling from Selma to Montgomery. He did it again in 1967 over riots in Detroit. In 1987, Ronald Reagan invoked the Insurrection Act over an Atlanta prison riot. I reminded you that my Attorney General, Edwin Meese, was in charge of handling that, and I was his point man as his chief of staff. It was a bloody riot in Atlanta. Some of the worst criminals at that time, certainly in the federal system. And they were much like Hamas. They were killing people they believed had been ratting them out and so forth. I believe they killed 1 or 2 guards. And in any event, we brought the Marines in. George H.W. Bush invoked it in 1989 to stop looting in the U.S. Virgin Islands after Hurricane Hugo. Bush also deployed it in 1992 after 4 L.A. police officers were acquitted in the Rodney King case. Several days of unrest followed in L.A. That was the most recent use of the Insurrection Act. And if Donald Trump uses it because of the violence that our ICE patriotic employees are facing, as well as some local cops, whether it be in Chicago or Portland or L.A. or wherever, he will have the absolute right to use that act. I don't even know what judicial review would be here. I don't even know how the judiciary has such authority to put itself in the position of a president and to order it. And my wife asked me a very good question the other day, and she always does, and she said, I wonder how many times presidents were sued in federal court, including up to the Supreme Court, challenging their authority to use the Insurrection Act. And honestly, I don't know. I suspect very few. But that's where the Democrat Party finds its strength now. In unelected government. Unelected government. So if Donald Trump uses the Insurrection Act to put down what are insurrection acts, what are defiance of federal immigration law, defiance of federal law enforcement enforcing federal immigration law, because the Democrat Party has decided that the destruction of America is their best bet in getting power back, because they've decided on new constituencies that they brought into this country, 20 million in the last 4 years before Trump, and that they intend to protect them, and on and on and on. If that's their position, of course the President of the United States can use the Insurrection Act. And let me be clear about this. The Democrat Party is the party of sabotage. It is the party of rebellion. It is the party of insurrection. It is the party of Marxism and Islamism. It is the party of criminals. It is the party of illegal aliens. It is the party of perverts. That's what it is. Men in women's sports, how sick is that? How sick? 25 years ago, if a man went into a woman's bathroom, they'd be arrested. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Our society works because of the freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. Everyday Americans should be able to speak openly and honestly about family and traditional values without retribution from the government. And that's a principle Pure Talk proudly supports. They sponsor my show, which allows me to stand strong behind the microphone every day and share the truth with you. If you want to support brands that defend freedom and pro-American values, I strongly encourage you to switch your wireless service to Pure Talk. You're going to get great 5G coverage on an extremely reliable and secure network, and with plans from just $25 a month, you'll save a ton of money. And Pure Talk also believes in creating American jobs and supporting America's small businesses. So if you're a small business owner, you can save even more while enjoying white glove service. Stand with the companies who share your values. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to switch to my favorite wireless company right now, Pure Talk, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, puretalk.com/LEVIN. Make the switch, folks. Make it today. All right, ladies and gentlemen. The media give voice to the tyrants, to the stupid. In other words, to elected Democrats. Ilhan Omar, who hates America, even though this country held its arms wide open to allow her and her family to come here from Somalia, refugee camps. Her response as a Marxist Islamist is to try and destroy the country. Almost sounds like Hamas. But of course she would never support Hamas, would she? She says invoking the Insurrection Act in his manufactured war on American cities, meaning Trump, is both illegal and unconstitutional, another unhinged act of authoritarianism. Senator Tammy Duckworth, this woman is very nasty. Really, really outrageous. We have the Insurrection Act for a reason, but it's not so a president with 34 felonies can ignore court orders and punish cities he doesn't like with military intimidation, especially not when the courts are telling him his claims of insurrection are untethered to the facts. She's a very devious demagogue and propagandist. Not because she's clever, it's because she's a moron. She's a moron. You can still go to war and be a war hero and be a moron. She's a moron. Here's a former left-wing federal prosecutor, Joyce White Vance, in a Substack post. The Insurrection Act is reserved for extreme situations. Now, we've had presidents use them in union fights, in tax fights, fights over booze, to enforce integration, conversely, to prevent segregation. And here the president would be using the Insurrection Act to do what? To enforce federal immigration laws being blatantly violated by Democrat city mayors and Democrat state governors. I mean, as if they're in the third world. We're a sanctuary city. We don't have to comply. I told you before, this is the nullification, that same means and mentality that was used to fight on behalf of slavery, the Confederacy. And so they are effectively, on this issue and others, seceding from the nation. They claim that you can't do anything about it, and then the courts will be with them. Now, they have loaded up the courts with like-minded nullifiers and secessionists who claim to be liberal and righteous, who hate the Constitution just like they do. So this former federal prosecutor, that's a phrase I despise. The Insurrection Act is reserved for extreme situations like rebellions or invasions. So tell me, in the multiple times it was used in the past, other than Lincoln in the Civil War and Ulysses S. Grant with the Klan, when was it used for a rebellion or an invasion? This is a former federal prosecutor, doesn't know her ass from a hole in the ground. May I say that, Mr. Producer? Trump is fully capable of spinning a narrative that way, and he goes on and on. These are supposed to be, in her case, a lawyer providing legal information. Is that what it sounds like to you? It's a fundamental responsibility of our government to uphold our immigration laws, to secure our sovereignty, our borders. It's in black and white. It's been passed by Congresses of both parties, signed by presidents of both parties. There's no question about this. And they throw around this phrase, authoritarianism or dictatorship. It's not coming, it's here, says Chris Murphy. And his girlfriend, I guess. Oh, yes, it's here. Unbelievable. He wants to use the Insurrection Act, perhaps, to protect the federal courthouse in Portland. He wants to use the Insurrection Act to prevent the destruction and the attack on federal detention facilities. The Democrats have basically weaponized their citizenry, and the illegal aliens to use force, to use violence against ICE. I mean, that's what they're doing. And Trump, you see, should just roll over. He should just roll over, as if he's Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski. One of them. By the way, Collins is in a tough race for re-election should she choose to run. Maybe she has chosen to run. I don't know. So when it comes up to election time for these wimp Republicans, they get more wimpy. They get even more wimpy. Yes. Rutherford B. Hayes, remember he used it twice, wants to deal with these striking railroad workers. That doesn't sound like an invasion to me, does it to you, Mr. Producer? No. Not an invasion. How about civil rights enforcement and integration? That's not an invasion, is it? No. So the Insurrection Act shouldn't have been used for that either? See, these leftists are morons. They're just stupid people. Stupid people. And in this case, the systematic, organized, well-funded opposition to the enforcement of our immigration laws for the single purpose of empowering the Democrat Party, even if it means destroying our own culture, destroying our own society, so be it. Because you see, like the Communist Party in every country it's in, you owe your allegiance to the party, not the country. That's why they burn the flag. Care about the flag? No, you owe your allegiance to the party. And in this country, they want it to be the Democrat Party. The Insurrection Act applies 100% in the four corners of the act. I'll be right back. Our society works because of the freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. Everyday Americans should be able to speak openly and honestly about family and traditional values without retribution from the government. And that's a principle Pure Talk proudly supports. They sponsor my show, which allows me to stand strong behind the microphone every day and share the truth with you. If you want to support brands that defend freedom and pro-American values, I strongly encourage you to switch your wireless service to Pure Talk. You're going to get great 5G coverage on an extremely reliable and secure network, and with plans from just $25 a month, you'll save a ton of money. And Pure Talk also believes in creating American jobs and supporting America's small businesses. So if you're a small business owner, you can save even more while enjoying white glove service. Stand with the companies who share your values. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my favorite wireless company right now, Pure Talk, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, puretalk.com/Levin. Make the switch, folks. Make it today.
Mark Levin, radio's principled patriot. Call in now at 877-381-3811.
One of the reasons I'm such a fan of both Tom Cotton and Elise Stefanik, because these are two great civil libertarians. Truly great civil libertarians. Neither Cotton nor Stefanik are Jewish, and yet they do what is right and what they believe and know to be right. There's an organization called CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. I've told you about them for decades. I told you how they came to be. A meeting with Hamas activists in the United States in the Marriott Hotel next to the Philadelphia International Airport. I know exactly where that is. Many of you do if you drive on 95. They had a meeting in a room there, and it was bugged. It was wiretapped by the FBI because of their association with the Holy Land Foundation, which was raising money, of course, illegally, for Hamas and terror groups. That's where the idea was hatched. That's where the idea was hatched. To create CARE. To try and the Islamist jihadis to secrete themselves into our media, into our discussion, into our culture, into our society. And everybody's wondered, who's funding this group? It's heavily, heavily funded. And over at one of the best of the websites, Free Beacon, great website, Chuck Ross writes, exclusive, Stefanik and Cotton urged Treasury Department to probe CARE for financial links to Hamas. Representative Elise Stefanik and Senator Tom Cotton are urging the Trump administration to investigate the Council on American Islamic Relations links to Hamas, according to a letter obtained by the Washington Free Beacon. In a letter sent Tuesday, I guess that would be today, to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, the Republicans argue that CARE's pattern of historic ties to Hamas, combined with the rhetorical encouragement CARE leaders have offered for Hamas, may constitute material support for terrorism. They cite CARE's designation as an unindicted co-conspirator in the 2009 federal court case against the Holy Land Foundation, a Hamas front group, and pro-Hamas rhetoric from CARE leaders in the wake of the October 7 terrorist attacks. CARE Executive Director Nihad Awad, now this guy Nihad Awad, he was in that meeting that I talked about. He said in November 2023 that he was, quote, happy to see, unquote, Hamas attack the Jewish state and applauded Hamas operatives for breaking the siege, quote unquote, against Israel. Cotton and Stefanik noted that Awad is a former leader, excuse me, of the Islamic Association of Palestine, a propaganda arm of Hamas. We urge the department to immediately investigate whether CARE maintains financial links to Hamas that constitute a violation of U.S. sanctions on Hamas, ensure that none of its assets are being used to advance the objectives of Hamas, said Cotton, the chairman of the Senate Republican Conference, and Stefanik, a top House Republican who's considering a run for governor of New York. If the Treasury Department acts on it, the request could pull back the curtain on CARE's foreign funding sources, which the group has gone to extensive lengths to keep secret. CARE does not disclose donors on its website or in its tax filings. The group quietly settled a lawsuit in March filed by a former board member that would have revealed the group's foreign donors. Now, obviously, something's going on here. Like many anti-Israel groups, CARE has falsely portrayed Israel as the unilateral aggressor in Gaza, all but ignoring Hamas's October 7 attack and its years-long refusal to release hostages taken during the war. CARE initially urged a ceasefire in the region, but in the wake of the ceasefire deal this week, it's now calling for an international tribunal for Israeli leaders and their unnamed enablers. I guess that would be me, right, Mr. Producer? Aren't I part of the whole Jewish cabal? An enabler. I think that's pretty much what Third Reich Bannon calls me, isn't it? Old Third Reich over there in the fraud room. I didn't know they made an office chair big enough for his ass, by the way. The latest request comes after Cotton urged the IRS to investigate CARE's tax-exempt status. See, the IRS is part of the Treasury Department, not part of the Justice Department. Arguing the agency should not subsidize organizations with links to terrorism, Cotton also petitioned the Department of Education last month to investigate a CARE initiative with Philadelphia Public Schools to provide lessons on American Jews and political power, quote unquote, and teaching September 11, 2001 in diverse classrooms, quote unquote. CARE would be teaching these. The latter, which advises teachers to avoid terms like jihadists and radical Islamic terrorists, which is exactly why I use these terms, because they're accurate. I don't need the word radical in front of Islamists. Islamist stands on its own. Republicans have scrutinized CARE for years, but the group has maintained extensive support from Democrats in Washington. Well, of course. Think about that. the Democrats defend and support CARE. CARE's website lists statements of support from more than 150 lawmakers, all but one of them Democrats. New York State and the rest of the country are fortunate to have civil organizations like the Council on American Islamic Relations fighting for the sake of our freedoms. You know who that's quoted, Mr. Producer? Chuck Schumer, 2022. The council's work in Connecticut and across the nation is greatly appreciated. You know who that is, ladies and gentlemen? That's sleazeball punk Chris Murphy, who I've mentioned before. Said that in 2019. CARE faced a rare rebuke from Democrats after Awad, and he is a wad, praised Hamas's October 7 attack. He praised it. The Biden White House condemned Awad's remarks as anti-Semitic and kicked CARE off its task force to combat anti-Semitism. What is that group doing on an anti-Semitism? Unless it wants to provide first-hand testimony, given the nature of that organization. Again, a little bit of history. I may mention this. When I first started out in talk radio, CARE would intimidate stations, general managers, program directors, that if any hosts were to criticize CARE, that they would claim Islamophobia, of course. Now, this was part of the game plan, always claim Islamophobia. In other words, always claim racism from the racists. Right? They're the racists. In any event, when I came into this business, I said, like hell, I'm going to criticize them, I'm going to expose them, I'm going to take them on, I'm going to name their leaders. Well, please don't do it. And as a matter of fact, I went further, didn't I, Mr. Producer? I said, go ahead and sue me. And I will counterclaim, and I won't settle, and I will have all your donor records, your texts, your emails, your phone records. I will conduct the depositions. Let's do it. Well, they've never done it, but they go around intimidating everybody else. Again, I'm trying to breathe life back into and revive what I used to consider, the whole purpose and the mission of conservative talk radio. To be brave, to be bold, to be out front, to be thinking 10 steps ahead, not paint by the colors, not have guests, wall-to-wall guests, wall-to-wall guests. Some guests are important. Some guests are fun. Some guests are interesting. But you got to have a purpose to what you're doing. That's what makes conservative talk radio conservative. Or as we call it here, our national town hall meeting. There has to be a purpose. There has to be a mission. Otherwise, you're really no better than the rest. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Our society works because of the freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. Everyday Americans should be able to speak openly and honestly about family and traditional values without retribution from the government. And that's a principle Pure Talk proudly supports. They sponsor my show, which allows me to stand strong behind the microphone every day and share the truth with you. If you want to support brands that defend freedom and pro-American values, I strongly encourage you to switch your wireless service to Pure Talk. You're going to get great 5G coverage on an extremely reliable and secure network, and with plans from just $25 a month, you'll save a ton of money. And Pure Talk also believes in creating American jobs and supporting America's small businesses. So if you're a small business owner, you can save even more while enjoying white glove service. Stand with the companies who share your values. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my favorite wireless company right now, Pure Talk, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, puretalk.com/Levin. Make the switch, folks. Make it today. By the way, CARE is welcome to come on the program. Awad. That's right, Wad. You're welcome to come on the program. It's a public invitation. Be happy to discuss your finances. I don't need to discuss your lies and propaganda and your Jew hate. You can save that for your comrades. I want to discuss your financing. Who funds you? Who finances you? Awad, the Awad. That's what we want to know. It's another guy. What is his name? Mehdi Hassan. Mehdi Hassan. This guy's a punk lowlife if there ever was one. An American hater, my view. Jew hater, there's no question about that. Gay hater. He's had jobs at MSNBC. He's been platformed on a number of podcasts. I think even Piers has had him on or whatever. This guy shouldn't be on anything. Except, I think he's on hallucinogens or something. Something's not right, but he's another one. We have this enemy within. And you're not allowed to call them the enemy within. No, they're the enemy within. They definitely are. They're a rot. They're a cancer. They're metastasizing. And they know how to use the language, the Constitution, to defend their hate. And if we're up to them, their violence. It's true. When we come back to this government shutdown, where the vast majority of the government isn't shut down, but the Democrats want time to go on. Because as time goes on, some people are going to feel the pinch. The vast majority of you will not. But some people will. And the media will highlight them. The media is already doing that. And then they want you to believe that Republicans always lose when there's quote-unquote a government shutdown. When that, in fact, is a lie, too. So what are the Democrats doing exactly? Ladies and gentlemen, what is it that they want? They started out wanting to make sure that their illegal alien friends who they just brought into the country have free health care, better than most of you. When they were called out on that, they tried to lie with the help of the media that wasn't what happened. And yet it is what happened. Now they came up with new propaganda. They're high-paid, propagandists in Washington. Let's claim we're doing what we're doing because we're very upset that the American people are paying too much for health care and that we want to fix that and the Republicans won't let us. And the Republicans keep saying, it's not a matter of letting you or not letting you. We're trying to get a continuing resolution passed and we will duke out the health care stuff simultaneously. That is, we got to get the budget funded now. And the Democrats have chosen this opportunity to do it because Chuck Schumer does not have testosterone. And the last time he looked a quote-unquote government shutdown in the face, he cried chicken. And his party's furious with him, especially AOC, Mr. Producer. That would be Sandy. He's looking. There you go. This is our new Sandy AOC sound for Sandy because, as we know, she was a bartender. I have nothing against bartenders. Just unless they're Marxist Islamists with low IQs who want to destroy my country, then I got a problem with them. But her only experience in the past was to change her name from AOC to Sandy and to pour drinks. Now, she's just spewing Marxism, Islamism. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. We're going to have our friend Eric Trump on the program. He currently has the #1 Amazon book, all categories, going up there. It's a fantastic book, too, by the way. Fantastic book. It's called Under Siege, My Family's Fight to Save Our Nation. And it is, you think you know everything and you don't, because he writes it from his perspective and the family's perspective, and it's really so compelling. And you're going to want to read this book, and we'll have him on to explain in his own words. President Trump is displeased with the Time magazine cover. He should be. I looked at it. It doesn't even look like him. Looks like a guy who's 120 years old, no hair. I mean, how hard would it be for Time magazine to do it appropriately? Not at all. But they don't want to do it appropriately. And I push for what I said the other day. Albert Nobel, the Nobel Prize, he created this. He funded it. He made a lot of money because he invented dynamite. And then he decided, I want to I want to have the greatest legacy of all time when he dies. And so he's the Peace Prize guy. And so Arafat got it as an example. Obama for doing absolutely nothing. And then there's Donald Trump, who certainly does deserve it. But why lobby the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, a committee of nobodies? It's in Sweden, a country that's really a nothing. You know, in the big scheme of things, let's be honest. I'm here. That's what we do. We're honest. We should have an American Peace Prize. It should be the Trump Peace Prize. It should be funded with the help of some billionaires. And he should get the first prize. It's that simple. Case closed. Well, who else should get it? Who else should get it? Nobody else that I can think of. Nobody else. So Latukas James is out there. She's screaming at the top of her lungs. She's good at that. Big lady. She's out there screaming at the top of her lungs like a good Marxist. At a rally yesterday. No, are people coming to a Letitia James rally in defense of her mortgage fraud? Now look. What was it? Oh, a Mondami rally. Oh, yeah. Even funnier in a sick way. So this is on Mondami rally. He has Latukas James there screaming at the top of her lungs how she's being targeted. Now, when you sign a mortgage application, you're signing under penalty of perjury. There's no retribution here. She stole money, and that was her intention. She lied to the bank. That was her intention. She violated federal law. She didn't expect to get caught. And Mondami's fine with that. He's fine with everything. If you hate America, you hate Jews, you hate law and order, you hate capitalism, he's your guy. So here she is, Latukas James. Cut 15, go.
You see, I know what it feels like to be attacked.
Oi, oi, oi,
for
oi,
just
oi.
doing it.
All right. She's not married, is she, Mr. Producer? No surprise there. I think we should start at the top so we have the fullness of her insanity. Go ahead.
You see, I know what it feels like to be attacked for just doing your job. But I also know what it feels like to overcome adversity.
No, you don't. You know what?
And
Overcoming adversity to her is overcoming dessert, Mr. Producer. Here's dessert. I don't want it. I mean, I want it, but I don't. I'm trying not to. I took Ozempic. I'm doing my best. I really don't want it. For her, that's overcoming adversity. The people of New York, you need to overcome diversity, D-I-E, because that's what she is. There are so many better people who could be attorney general of every race, of any race, than that slob. Oops. Go ahead.
Rock.
Hold on. What'd she say there? She clearing her throat? Did she go rock? Is that what she said? Go ahead.
And I will not bow. I will not break.
First of all, she couldn't bow. Her life depended on it. Not with that gut. I know. She said I stand on solid rock, but it was the way she pronounced the end of the word rock. 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 Go ahead.
I will not capitulate. I will not give in. I will not give up.
Those are all the Marxist Islamists applauding, clapping seals.
You come for me, you gotta come to all of us.
Whoa, see that? Hold on. Come through all of us. Did you hear that? You know I have an ear for this stuff. Because that, shows the phoniness of these people. Come for all of us. I think she said rock. Let's keep listening. Go ahead.
All of us.
Oh, there it is. You heard it, didn't you, Rich? All of us. What is that? What is that? Go ahead.
Single one of us.
There it is.
We're all in this together.
Oy, we're all in this together with her? Count me out. Count me out. Ladies and gentlemen, if she's convicted, she's a crook. A petty crook. It's not ideological. If she's convicted, and you know the facts. Now, the defense counsel has to try and figure out how to argue. Well, she wasn't looking, she had a bad day. She didn't take her eye drops. Her hand was shaking. She didn't really sign it. A phony, a fake, a fraud came in and signed it for her, and she didn't know what she was signing. The guy covered the part up with his palm when there's they got to come up with some argument. This is so simple. So simple. Even this guy, Ty Cobb. See this guy, Ty Cobb, on, what's it, CNN, Mr. B? He's got the old whiskers mustache, where they take wax at the end and they curl it up like he looks like he's, Wyatt Earp or something. This guy was a Trump lawyer, I hear. And he goes on TV and is constantly trashing Trump. I said, what the hell's wrong with this guy? He's sitting on a cucumber or something? What is with this guy? Weirdo. Maybe she'll get him as her lawyer. Her lawyer. Mortgage fraud, da. Going to jail, la. What a crackpot. She's not alone. At a rally, were they all required to wear, red shirts there? I mean, being all the Marxist Islamists that they are, I'm just wondering, all the Marxists. Here's Zoran at the same rally yesterday. Cut 16, go.
There is something special in this room tonight. It's power.
It's power. That's why I wrote the book on power. This is where their heads are. They want power. It's not power of the people, power of the thousands. It's to use the people in the thousands to get power, to exercise power, to impose his Islamist ideology, to impose his Marxist cultural and economic ideology. That's the whole point of this guy. Go ahead.
It's the power of hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers united, ready to usher in a new day.
There's nothing new about Marxism. It's very old. There's nothing new about Islamism. It's very old. There's nothing new about tyranny, totalitarianism. They're very, very old. What's new is that New York has experienced neither of them. That's what's new. Go ahead.
It is the power of a movement.
Power of a movement. Really? A movement? Well, a bowel movement is a movement, and that's the way I view this. One big bowel movement. Go ahead.
Won the battle over the soul.
Shut up, you puke. Shut up, you phony fraud. Shut up, you Marxist Islamist. Shut up, you jerk who hates our country. Shut up, you Jew hater. I know exactly what you are. Whether you get votes or not, it won't change what you are and who you are. And your damnable family, too. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin. Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
You know, we have a very good man as a guest here. He's a good son, father, husband, businessman, loyal. And he's fought the enemy, ladies and gentlemen. We talk about this enemy all the time, the corruption of government and the establishment, fused with the media and academia. And he's had to fight them all at once. And I'm talking about Eric Trump. He's got a #1 Amazon book that I predict, thanks to you, it'll be #1 on New York Times list, which will drive them nuts, nuttier than they are. And the book is Under Siege, My Family's Fight to Save Our Nation. I've had an opportunity to read this book. I had Eric on the Sunday show on Fox. Eric, it's a pleasure to have you. This really is a different way to explain what took place. From your eye view, you were involved in all of it. You were targeted along with your father and the rest of your family and all of it. And you decided, I'm going to lay this out so the American people know just how dangerous this remains today, right?
Yeah, listen, Mark, there's no question about it. I mean, as you're saying that, it was almost, at the time, it was almost embarrassing, right? As you know, as you were getting debanked, and it's, what am I doing wrong? What am I? And then all of a sudden you start realizing that it was a coordinated attack by everybody. I mean, they tried everything they could to destroy our family. They tried everything they could to destroy our nation and to Make America Great Again movement. They tried everything they could to destroy you, Mark, and everybody listening to us right now. But they started by trying to go through my father and knock him out of the race between multiple impeachments, between the dirty dossier, between the Russia hoax. I mean, you and I have spoken about the Russia hoax, but I was dead center in it. I was the guy in Trump Tower who was getting calls from the FBI saying we had secret servers that were communicating with the Kremlin. And then if that wasn't enough, they tried to impeach him the first time. They went after Kavanaugh. They tried to impeach him the second time. Then when that wasn't good enough, they started ignoring him. They took him off of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. They banned him from YouTube. Laura Trump was getting emails from YouTube. If you post anything about Donald Trump, we're going to suspend your accounts. We're going to throw you off. They were in full censorship mode. And when that didn't work, it was gag orders by the courts. You saw what they did there. Then it was 91 indictments. Then it was debanking. It was deplatforming. It was coming after our company. Then Letitia James came after us, and Alvin Bragg came after us, and Jack Smith came after us. And, go down the list. Fannie Willis and her boyfriend in Atlanta, they all came after us. And when that didn't work, they raided Mar-a-Lago. They raided Melania's room. They raided Barron's room. And when that didn't work, they called up the IRS. They had the IRS leak all of our tax returns. All of my father's tax returns for 15 years were leaked. So were mine, so was Don, so was everybody in the family, and most of our corporate employees. So it was a coordinated leak of everybody surrounding kind of the Trump empire. Then I got 112 subpoenas. I became the most subpoenaed person in American history. Every single day I was seeing another deposition, another subpoena. They did everything they could. And then, Mark, when all of that failed, they tried to kill my father. They tried to put a bullet in his head, and then 8 weeks later they tried to kill him again in West Palm. They did everything they could to silence us, to kill us, to bankrupt us, to go after the company, to go after our employees, to take down the family, to embarrass us, to delete our voice, to delete who we were as people, to flip our employees on us, right? Thankfully, that never happened. And I had to tell the coordinated siege because it was all orchestrated, and it was all orchestrated out of Washington, D.C. All of these criminals were going to the White House all the time. And it was being orchestrated by Anthony Blinken. It was being orchestrated by Joe Biden. It was being orchestrated by, Merrick Garland. It was being orchestrated by all of these people. I mean, you literally had Jack Smith, who was bringing classified folders into Mar-a-Lago, putting them on the carpet in my father's office, taking pictures and releasing them to the entire universe. And they were trying to take down our family because they wanted to take down Make America Great Again. It's no different than Obama weaponized the IRS, went after conservatives, went out, against churches and pastors. I mean, they have targeted all of us, who we are, conservatives in this country, and somebody had to tell the story of Under Siege, and somebody had to do it succinctly so that they can never get away with these games again.
Eric, you explain this in a story fashion. I don't mean story in terms of fiction, a story fashion. You don't just load it up with data and so forth. You explain from the heart, from the mind, what you experienced, what family members experienced, what you were going through, the psychology of these things, and how you had to be tough and so forth and so on. And I just want to pick up one little weed or something in the weeds, which is St. Jude's. Everybody knows about St. Jude's. They love St. Jude's. The saving of kids with cancer. And they came after you early on St. Jude's. Explain that story.
My life work's been supporting kids with terminal cancer. St. Jude Children's Hospital, the best pediatric research hospital in the world, located in Memphis, Tennessee. They're the best at what they do anywhere in the world. And I fell in love with the cause at 20 years old. And Mark, I started raising money for them. The first year I raised $230,000. They said it was the biggest success. And then the next year I doubled it and doubled it and doubled it. I had the lowest expense ratio of any charity in the country, 9.2%, right? Half of that expense ratio was credit card processing. Anyway, I was doing incredible things. I was a young kid, green as hell, didn't know what I was doing other than I wanted to help kids. And I was really, really good at raising money. I used the Trump clubs to do it. I used our members to do it. I used our employees to do it. We were kicking butt and taking names. And sure enough, here comes the election. Hillary Clinton's getting killed because her foundation did crappy work in Haiti. They were flying G550s around the world. I mean, everybody was spoiled. Half the people on the payroll of the Clinton Foundation were, planning Chelsea's wedding. I could go on and on and on. You know the scandals as well as I do, and Hillary and Bill were getting absolutely annihilated for their foundation. So guess what the Attorney General of New York does? One day I come into work, again, innocent, so proud of everything I'd accomplished for terminally ill children, built the largest ICU dedicated to dying children in the world, which still bears my name at St. Jude. All of a sudden, somebody comes up to me and says, the Attorney General is doing a press conference, and it has to do with you. I go, what do you mean it has to do with me? What do I have to do with the Attorney General of New York? And we were naive to this game at this point. Yeah, they're going to do a press conference related to the Eric Trump Foundation, and she gets up in front of the seal of New York. Today we are investigating the Eric Trump Foundation, blah, 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 and they go on and on and on. We believe he's taking money from terminally ill children. And how can I take money from terminally ill children? My expense ratio was the lowest in the country. It's 9.2%, as I said before. And what I realized very quickly, and I remember, Mark, how badly that hurt. I mean, I love kids. I love the kids of St. Jude. I love that hospital. I've raised over $50 million for that hospital. But I realized that I very quickly was going to become the counter narrative to the Clintons. They needed a counter narrative based on the fact that her foundation was pretty much a sham. And so they needed to attack me. They needed a counter narrative to the story that was out there every single day that was hanging over her head. And so they came after me, and they came after me viciously. And I'll never forget, I sent them everything. I went through all the subpoenas. I went through everything. I sent them every document. And I didn't hear from them for 18 months. And then finally somebody goes up, a media reporter goes up to the Attorney General. Are you still investigating the Eric Trump Foundation? Oh, yes, we're still investigating. They were never investigating. They were just trying to get a PR statement out there. They wanted to stand in front of the seal of New York and said that they were investigating a Trump. And it was sad and it was atrocious. And that should have never been done to a charity.
We're going to bring Eric back after the break. As you can see, this book is a killer book, and you're going to want to read it. Go to Amazon.com right now and grab it. Amazon.com. The book is Under Siege, My Family's Fight to Save Our Nation. Now, you might think you know everything, but trust me, you don't. This is really in the shadow stuff, and it is brutal, and you're going to want to read about it. You can get it at Amazon.com, any major bookstore. Today it's a brand new release, hot off the presses, Under Siege. I've read it. It's a killer book. My Family's Fight to Save Our Nation. And again, there's so much in here you haven't heard before. So Eric Trump, I want to discuss with you your overall thinking. This is going on. You receive over 100 subpoenas. They're trying to break you guys. You're spending millions of dollars defending yourself. It takes away from your business activities. You're also trying to help your father in several elections and so forth. And so, what was it like waking up in the morning? And by the way, you'll get this whole impression and understanding in the book. The president does an intro. Ivanka does an intro. I mean, this is a very personal account of what took place. So what was it like in the day of the life of Eric Trump?
This is brutal, Mark. I thought I was going to be running a company. My father came to me when I was 33 years old. I wanted to take over the Trump organization, all of our assets. I realized I was actually becoming more of a psychologist to the people around me than I actually was an executive at a company, right? I was trying to hold all the pieces together. Right? This wasn't running hotels at this point. It wasn't running golf courses or building, assets. This was literally trying to hold people's hearts and minds together as they were getting savagely attacked. And I can't tell you the amount of times that our employees, were they tried to extort them. You tell me anything about Donald Trump. Tell me anything, and we'll set you free. Otherwise, we're going to come after you, and we're going to look into your past. But if you tell us anything about your former boss, and you're good to go. You'll never hear from us again. They were extorting these people. This made the mob in New York look like small potato stuff, and this was law enforcement. This was the attorney generals, and this was DAs. But Mark, what I'll tell you is all worth it. When I see that Middle East peace deal yesterday, when I see everything that my father has accomplished, when I see churches in this country filled back up, when I see people proud of the American flag and this country respected around the world, and the best economy we've ever seen, and inflation that's back down to normal numbers, and low gas prices, everything was worth it. I mean, they stuck hundreds of arrows in our back. They wanted to silence us. They wanted to make sure we were gone. They wanted to make sure we were dead. They wanted to make sure we were bankrupt, that the Trump name was off of every building around the world. I mean, Letitia, she made a whole point of that. She wanted to see our company gone, and yet we won it all, and he's back in the White House, and America's thriving. And so in a certain way, as ugly as the story is, it's actually a beautiful story. It's a story of perseverance. It's a story that if you have enough backbone, you have enough fight, and you're willing to stand for your values, and you don't cave in, and you don't ever, ever, ever break, you can achieve the ultimate greatness. And I'm really convinced that's what my father's done. And by the way, I do believe that the hand of God was on him. And I say that, in the most sincere way. There's no question he was protected throughout this fight. And he had to be. There's no way we would have otherwise survived it.
And yet at the beginning, you went to Georgetown, as your father explains, and you weren't sure you were going to join the Trump business or not. And then you announced one day that you were, and that you are. And, I'm going to tell you something. I spoke to your father the other day. We were talking about the Middle East. He actually invited me to come on the plane and come over there with him. By the way, the nicest guy in the world. He's so generous. People need to understand how generous your father is. And funny, despite all the rest of it. But in any event, I said, I had Eric on, and he was unbelievable. He sang your praises, Eric. He is so proud of you. He's proud of all of his kids, which leads me to this question. Sometimes you have a wealthy guy raises kids, and you got a couple of goofballs, or you got some guy who's a cheater. But not with him, and not with the Trump children. How did that happen? Was it him and your mother and so forth?
They did not put up with nonsense, and they believed in one thing. Listen, we were spoiled. I could never say that we weren't spoiled. We lived in Trump Tower. We had a warm roof over our head. We had great food. We got the best education, but we did not get cash. We just, if you wanted something, congratulations, get a job, go work for it. And he really instilled that. I mean, Mark, I started on construction sites when I was 11. There is nothing I can't build with my hands. I can wire my house. I mean, I grew up doing HVAC. I grew up doing electrical.
You know what? I got to have you guys over for dinner. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
I will
anyway,
do any task around your house, Mark. But honestly, he put us on construction sites, and it did two things. First of all, it did three things. It taught you a skill, like a real trade, which is the bedrock of what I do every single day, which is construction and real estate. It taught you the value of a dollar, right? When you're making minimum wage, at the end of the day, you don't want to, go out and, spend the $20 that you made buying a bottle of vodka, a liter of vodka. You're just not going to do it, right? Your time's too valuable. The blood, sweat, and tears of that day, you're just not going to spend it on worthless, hobbies and vices. And third of all, you were so damn exhausted by the end of the day after swinging a sledgehammer and, taking down walls that the last thing that you were going to do was party, right? So it occupied your time. It taught you the value of a dollar. And it taught you a skill that was going to become fundamental in our lives. And so if you look at every one of his kids, all five of us, none of us ever had a problem with drugs. None of us ever had a problem with drinking. We never went down these bad rabbit holes. We never had laptops from hell. We were never selling our finger paintings to foreign nationals for money. We were always the first people in the office in the morning, the last people to leave. We never left the campaign stage. Everything we ever did, we busted our butts doing. He instilled work ethic in us, and my mom instilled manners and discipline and culture, and they were phenomenal parents. He's the greatest father one could ever imagine, and he did it in such a unconventional way, but such a beautiful way.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. These places you run, I mean, my wife Julie and I have been to a couple of them. They are like top-class places. I mean, they really are fantastic. The Doral, isn't that the name of the one near Miami?
Doral in Miami, of course. I built every inch of that property.
My wife and I went there like 6-8 months ago. I didn't want to leave the place. I mean, what do I eat? Hamburgers. I don't eat. The hamburger was great. And look, I'm not promoting. I'm just saying I was there. The location was great. I mean, it's fantastic. Do you go to these places and check them out yourselves?
I built every single one of them. And in fact, what I'm famous for in the company is I won't walk through the lobby. I go through the loading docks. Every time I show up at one of our properties, I mean, short of a big event or something like that, I go through the loading docks and I'll walk through every mechanical room, every back of house space, spaces that guests will never, ever see. And I do that, Mark, to make a point, because our back of house, our mechanical rooms, they better be immaculate. They better be spotless. They better be dust-free. They better be perfectly well lit. I mean, I'm as anal as it comes. And if your back of house is in great order, your employees will be in great order, your team will be in great order. Certainly your lobbies are going to be beyond perfect, right? Because that's just an expectation. Every room is going to be perfect because that's an expectation. But no, we have an attention to detail that very few people see. And I got that from my father. He's got the best building genes I've ever seen, and I think I follow directly behind him. We love construction. We love building. There's no one that does it better. There's no one that's more anal and, detail-oriented than we are as a family. And, I think you see that in my father. There's times that he can be super macro, and there's other times where, he can be incredibly granular, and that's a beautiful trait to have. They're both beautiful traits to have.
And he loves to show off the Oval Office, things he's added to the Oval Office, at his expense, by the way. Things he's added to the Oval Office, things he's done to the White House. You see what he's doing to the Rose Gardens and so forth. And he is really into this stuff. And he knows, he knows the different types of marble and so forth. And he'll take time and show you. He'll spend a half hour talking about it.
Oh, Mark, I'm always the guy that gets the call. Honey, I need 2 flagpoles. I need 2 flagpoles for the north and south grounds of the White House. Sure, Pops, I'll have them to you. You know, I want to pay for them. I'm donating them to the White House, and sure enough, you know, I order them from our flagpole company, and because we use them at all the properties, and I send them over. If you look at the Rose Garden, I mean, we've used that exact same, the stone, the terrazzo. We've used that at Mar-a-Lago. The umbrellas, the tables that we have there are the exact same spec that we use at Mar-a-Lago. And over the years, we've just found out what works and what holds up and what's beautiful and what's indestructible and you know, what's aesthetically pleasing. And you know, so many of the things you see around the White House. But no, he's a master builder. I mean, there's no marble that he does not know. There's no design that he does not know. You know, him and I we spend hours. He'd call me up. You know, I think this bathroom. I think we should do this, and you know, lay out the toilet here and move the shower stall around into this corner, and then I would draw it out, and I'd go back to him. No, I think if we made this tweak, it would actually get better. We did this relentlessly with every clubhouse, with every hotel. He's incredibly granular. He's got beyond having an unbelievable vision, he's got a photographic memory when it comes to plans. I certainly do as well. And I think it would surprise a lot of people, but you know, he is the ultimate. He is the ultimate builder. He is the ultimate person to build the wall in this country. There's no one that knows that game better than he does. And he did it his entire life, and he did it successfully in the most cutthroat place in the world to do it, which is, you know, frankly, you know, hospitality in New York City.
Your father's not a ideological conservative. He's not an ideological anything, and yet he's got a lot of common sense. What do you think has driven him politically? What do you think has driven him to get into this? I mean, he's pointed out himself, he could have spent the rest of his life doing what he does, being very famous. He had that massively popular program, and yet he decided to get in it again and fight it. And it seems to me, the more they tried to destroy him, the more he pushed back. Is that the personality?
Yes, absolutely the personality. I mean, I was there in the office with NBC as they were begging him and us, right, because I was on the show as well, to do another 3 seasons of The Apprentice. And, you know, this was a $1 billion type dollar contract, right? I mean, it was massive. And he goes, guys, I have something else in mind. I'm really sorry. I have something else in mind. I'm not going to renew. And as soon as he did that, NBC turned on him like he was a dog, like they had never, ever, ever met him again. And he didn't care. Mark, listen, this country's given us everything. He's gotten, you know, every bit of fame, wealth, notoriety. He's achieved everything that you could possibly achieve as a person and so much more. He wanted to save this country. I mean, I would sit there and he'd be reading the New York Times. Education in the United States is ranked 30th in the world. And he's shaking his head. He's like, how? We spent 10 times the amount per pupil on education, yet we're ranked 30th in the world. And I'll never forget 60 Minutes, right? The 60 Minutes took, you know, cameras down to one of the ICBM silos, you know, somewhere in the Midwest. You know, this clock doesn't work, and, you know, this is still being run off of a floppy disk. And, you know, this you know, young kid who's a missileer is going through everything that's wrong with this silo and how we're not prepared and how our systems are all run down. And he's literally gritting his teeth saying, how in the world could we, first of all, how could we ever let it get there? But how could we be stupid enough to take 60-minute, you know, cameras through our ballistic missile silos and talk about how our, you know, technology is antiquated and how it's run down and how it no longer works and how we're using floppy disks from 30 years ago. And it just infuriated him. He goes, who are these incompetent people? And, you know, sure enough, listen, you had the White House Correspondents' Dinner that night when, you know, Obama, as a community organizer, right, is sitting there, you know, laughing about Donald Trump, you know, a guy who's, you know, unparalleled in terms of his entire career and everything he's ever done, which he's turned to gold, literally and figuratively, as you've seen from the Oval Office. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Obama's up there making jokes, oh, ha, ha, ha. And I think there's a certain point that's, I'm going to show you people, and I'm going to do it better, and I'm going to work harder. You know, and I'm going to prove you all wrong, and he did in every sense of the word. But again, he did it by himself, and he did it with a very small group of family members because we didn't have any friends back there, Mark. I mean, we had no senators, we had no congressmen, there was no one lining up to endorse us, there was no one lining up to speak at the Iowa caucuses. We had no one. We had ourselves. That was, we had our voices, ourselves, and our pocketbooks. He self-funded the vast majority of his initial campaign. We went up against $1.5 billion Hillary Clinton war chest, and he self-funded his own campaign, and somehow we pulled it off. The guy is miraculous. Don't ever bet against Donald Trump. Mm-mm. The people who have across, a lot of years have all lost, a lot of wealth and tremendously badly, and it's never worked out for them.
Folks, the people in this audience love President Trump. They love his family, Eric. They love you. And, folks, you don't know the half of it. I know that sounds weird. I'm telling you the truth. You got to read this book, Under Siege, My Family's Fight to Save Our Nation. You're going to see all the ugly stuff. You're going to hear all the ugly stuff, but you're also going to be inspired. You're going to be invigorated. This really is a fantastic family that has done fantastic things, that is continuing to do fantastic things. You're going to love this book, Under Siege, My Family's Fight to Save Our Nation. You can go to Amazon.com right now. It'll be delivered tomorrow. It's hot off the presses today. Every major bookstore has it, Barnes & Noble, and the big warehouse stores, too. Eric, really great job. I love this book, as I told you on Fox. Great job. In America, grab your copy. God bless you and be safe.
Thanks so much, Mark. Great being on.
We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Quote, I love Hitler, unquote. Leaked messages expose young Republicans' racist chant. Not all of them, of course, but a handful of them from about 3 states, especially their Jew hatred chants. So I want to congratulate Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. You're having an impact. What do you think, America? Is this a good thing? A good thing? I think we should congratulate those who are affecting our youth, like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. And there's others, too. So they're very effective in destroying the Republican Party, destroying your children, destroying the conservative movement, destroying MAGA when the president leaves. That's what they're doing, just so you know. And it's having an impact, just so you know. This isn't just a theoretical discussion. Don't forget, do it now. Order it tonight. Under Siege, My Family's Fight to Save Our Nation by Eric Trump. You're going to love this book, forward by his father, and you're going to learn things and know things that are going to endear you even more to Eric and his family. Really, the human side. It's just incredible. Again, Amazon.com or any major bookstore. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighter, emergency personnel, and the truckers, men and women in Ukraine and in Israel, and you, the American people. Thank God for each and every one of you. Let's do it tomorrow. What do you say? Same place, same time. Have a good evening.